I have the distinct pleasure of having a few words here with Will Eno, one of our favorite San French playwrights. If you aren't familiar with his work, some of his recent titles, Wakey, Wakey, which was just recently at the Signature Theatre with Michael Emerson. The Realistic Joneses was on Broadway with Michael C. Hall and Marisa Tomei and Tracy Letts, and I'm forgetting the fourth person. Toni Collette. Middletown, Gnit, Title and Deed, The Open House, it goes on and on. Thom Pain, Based on Nothing, Tragedy of Tragedy, we can just keep on going. Yeah, so is that it? All the Humanities? All the Humanities, exactly, all the Humanities. So we're just going to talk a bit today, a little bit about Will and his work and his life, just because he's the best. And it's really an excuse for me just to have a conversation with Will. You guys are all secondary to that. But first I wanted to say, how's it going, Will?
It's going very well, and I'm very happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to just sort of secretly just having a conversation with you guys and not... No, that's not.
Well, then I don't know what I'm going to do. So I want to say personally, how's Albertine?
She's great. My wife and I have a daughter named Albertine who's actually officially 3 today, but we had a party yesterday. Thanks. I hope if you're watching online, Albertine, go ahead. Yeah.
So how is fatherhood, though? I mean, it's kind of wild for everybody, right?
It's a really, really great thing, and I think we really lucked out with a wonderful, wonderful little person. But she's talking up. She didn't talk early. Her way of learning things seems to sort of make some forays, and then she stops. So she said the word door very, very early in her life, and then quieted down for a couple of months. And
that's a good entry word.
It is. It's right. Yeah. I actually found it. I thought it sort of philosophical and transcendent that she'd say that. My mom, who can ruin anything, said, "Oh, maybe she'll be a doorman." But so then she quieted down, and then she just says the most wonderful things. And this morning she said, "I'm not crazy about anything," which is funny because she really is crazy about a lot of things. It's just interesting to see someone. It's probably very much like what we all do all the time, is you're just trying out language in a very plain way. And as a writer and as a person and as her dad, it's fun to be around that and to think about that. And just she does such funny little things that I never had occurred to me in writing, and I pass it along as you are all writers too. She said she used mine with a possessive S all the time. That's mines, which makes total sense, but it never occurred to me that mines, these are mines. So things like that.
I have a friend who has a 2.5-year-old now, and he says "chase you," which is basically mean "chase me," and he'll go "yeehaw, chase you," and that's do you see yourself in Albertine at all, or is it just like this little stranger in your house?
It is
because I think kids are kind of like little strangers. You don't know who they are.
Yeah, I think you flatter yourself when you see things, but I think she's very much this wonderful strange person, and then she has this thing which I would like to think I tried to strive for in my writing and in my selfhood, of sort of trying to just be inclusive. And sometimes if I say, "Hey, heads or tails?" she says, "Heads and tails." So I see that as...
Yeah, that's good. So as a dad, I imagine you have a lot of just kind of free time, right? Endless amounts of free time. Are you into anything right now as Will Eno? What's Will Eno into right now?
Canada is one thing, and weightlifting, but with tiny little weights, and nothing. I was talking with Nate, who had complimented me on my physique, which I've achieved. I was sick almost all the way through the spring, and just with a hacking cough, so I lost a lot of weight.
It's not from tiny weights.
Then I went to the gym twice, and that's how I
It's a good secret.
Yeah.
We could spend the next hour talking about your love for Canada, but is there any particular bullet point?
The Middletown which you guys engineered, is up at the Shaw Festival, which I've never been to, and my wife Maria had, since she was a little kid, she went to theater camp and stuff like that, and she really wanted to go up to this thing for her whole life. So we're going up tomorrow or Wednesday. So I just have been emailing with a bunch of Canadians, and Wakey was for some reason the design team was loaded with Canadians, and if they weren't Canadian, they seemed like they were Canadian. So,
really nice.
Yeah, just seemed to be freedom-loving people.
Yeah. Well, we were talking earlier about the town of the Shaw Festival is kind of like a little amazing little village with like fudge shops and and kind of randomly designed.
It does. It seems like it was something drawn by a 3-year-old because it's all just parks and ice cream or something.
Which has elements of Middletown in it to some degree, just like every town,
Yeah. Right. I'm also. I have not seen so many productions of that play, and it's just interesting to see a somewhat core production of it. It's kind of interesting.
Cool. When is that happening?
It's running right now, and I think it runs through September.
Great. So how has being a father changed the writing process for you at all? And I guess we should at some point talk about what is your writing process, but for now, has it changed your process at all? Do you have less time, more time?
I definitely have less time, nothing comes to mind.
Nothing comes to mind.
Any of the words you said don't. Words come to mind.
So do you have to set time aside to write now?
I do. I go over to the 42nd Street, the old library with the lions.
Oh yeah. In the big reading room there.
Well, I got this neat thing. Got a swipe card, and you go into this area where there's a bunch of carols, and if there's a free carol, and I always feel self-conscious. Tracy Letts did not know the word carol, and it really surprised me. And I said, "What?" And is that generally a word people know? Carol?
Yeah.
It's just not like that. Not like that right over there.
Yeah, cubicle.
Cubicle.
It's a much more poetic way to
Both
say
his
it.
parents worked at the University of Oklahoma, I think, so I was just surprised. Seems like.
You gotta have something on Tracy Letts.
He knows so many other words. He knows a lot of words. But, so I go over there and I try to write and do the best I can.
So do you have to set aside time, or is it just kind of when you can?
It's a little when I can, and I try to go over there every day.
Every day.
Yeah.
Is that important to you to be writing every day?
It feels good to try.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if I could just, I think this is going great, by the way. just quickly, it is. I hope you guys are having fun in your lives and in your. I have made writing sort of a misery for myself sometimes, and the writing that I did was not any better than the writing that I did when I actually was feeling good about myself and feeling excited about trying new things rather than scared about failing. So I just, I think the festival thing is such a great thing, and I hope you're taking it really, really seriously, and then also to just, some nice mix of things. Where you are really grabbing it with both hands and then also saying, "I'm not crazy about anything."
So is that the secret to making it not a misery? Like, what would you say is a good way to avoid that?
It's so the fact that you are embarked on something that human beings have been doing for thousands of years. That I actually think is an exciting thing, but it can be a very daunting and sort of crushing thing to think, what, I'm going to sit down and write a play after human beings have been doing it. But in some ways, it's just a shift in perspective to think, and why not? Why not you sit down and write a play? Someone, probably many people have described the whole process of literature and drama and poetry is just, it's just this long thing that we all contribute a tiny, if you just see it as a big scroll that you're just wanting to put a little bit of yourself on, it just all feels a lot better than the crushing press of history waiting to obliterate you. Which is sort of also true.
Yeah, it is. Is that really what it is? Is it the weight of expectations right now, or is it just the weight of the task that you're setting?
You guys could all chime in on what form feeling bad takes for yourself, because it has.
And we can get off misery real quick if you want to.
Well, I bring it up in order to there's plenty of joy to be found, and I guess it's both those things, and it's in the same way. If you can find the sort of thrill and joy and fun of just the line that you're working on, right? Just actually, because it gets better, writing. I don't mean to take that phrase from such an important thing. Try to pull it into struggling with a line.
Yeah, one line, two lines.
Yeah, so there's that, and then there is the larger thing of maybe this will really become a play that history needs somehow.
Right.
And you can't know, so that's the thing you can pay attention to. That's all. I hope you're having fun.
Well, does having success change some of that for you too? I mean, so if, people can look at your work and say, well, you were on Broadway a couple seasons ago. Your shows are being done around the country. You've got residencies. There's a certain amount of plays in your catalog you've gotten to a certain point. Is that expectation something that sits on you as you write?
Probably, but maybe not. But if not for any grand, noble reasons. It's just I think I have sort of lucked out by being a little bit out of it in certain respects in the world. Just sort of it's not. It's the upside of not. This is a good sentence. It's the upside of not feeling good about myself.
I actually totally know what you mean.
So sometimes you can phrase it to yourself. I could write a play that many people hate. I could write one more play, and then people just like. I think I got that.
So you surprise yourself when you don't. Is that what ends up happening? To some sense? Like when an audience responds to a play, do you know? Okay, I think we've got something that people will like. Or you
I don't. Which is I often don't, and that's a really fun. This play, The Open House, is in some ways there's a lot of quotes from my mom in there. I've never ever done that with a play. I've actually used a lot of things from life, and in some ways it sort of is the best. If you don't know that play, it's a play about a family in which nothing is resolved and everybody disappears, and that was the best that I could do in writing about my family. And I loved that production. It was over at Signature, and Oliver Butler directed it, who was the Debate Society has their plays with you guys, I think. And what was the great thrill, and this can also feel scary, but I hope you can find it to be a joy and a thrill, is really knowing, just being really, really specific with everything, knowing exactly what you're doing, but not really having any sense of what someone else would make of it. Because we really knew every inch of that thing up and down, but I didn't really know. I heard really nice things about it being a really satisfying and emotional experience, which I really wanted it to be, but it's very easy to see how someone might say that has zero of the elements that play needs in it. So that was a good, exciting feeling.
Great. We can shift a little bit and maybe talk some for those who may not know your work or the history of your work, a little bit of how you got started, so maybe your own personal origin story. So at what point did you write your first play, when you sit down and say, okay, I'm going to step into this and become a writer? Is there a moment of the timeline that for you that makes the most sense for us to talk about?
It was a long time ago, and I was pretty old. But I came to it kind of late, and I wrote a two-person play. Called A Canadian Lies Dying on American Ice, about something terrible has happened in a hockey game, which is, of all sports, it's not the one that I really pay attention to. But I don't know how it came to that. So I wrote a short play. It was two hockey announcers trying to fill some time while they got this person or corpse off of the ice. And it just I felt some little bits of kind of flow. Of course, the difference, I had been writing fiction and other stuff, and it wasn't easy or cost free or anything like that, but I just felt a little bit of flow. And that's the only sort of copied word, but that is the one that comes to mind. And I don't have a great story.
I know one good story, and I don't know exactly when this occurs on your timeline. So was it a tragedy that you were in London and you photocopied a bunch of copies?
Oh yeah.
And walked it around, and somehow the National was the one theater that called you back?
Yeah, that was, I did proofreading for, I did all that Xeroxing, and I can't even think of the name of the company, but I Xeroxed a bunch of plays back when people had to carry around pieces of paper. And I dropped off Tragedy at the National, and I didn't remember this till the guy who first read it over there reminded me, but I wrote a note. I'm right-handed, and I wrote a note with my left hand, and then ended it saying, I'm right-handed, and I'm writing this with my left hand. They amazingly, Chris Campbell was the assistant literary manager, who's now the literary manager at the Royal Court, read it and passed it along to Jack Bradley, who was the literary manager there. I was amazed. That was, and then they did a reading, and I had a production at the Gnit Theatre and at BBC radio production and stuff like that. And you guys all know, sometimes, you get brushed off by the theater under the stairs, so-and-so, like they're the Royal National Theatre of London. So I thought that's how it worked, kind of, because you just wrote notes with your left hand if you're right-handed. But I'm sure that the lesson still stands, that sort of following funny hunches and maybe sending things to London is not a bad way to sort of hunt around to try to get a play.
So was that at a time when this was your thing, full on, I'm a playwright? At that time, did you have a mentor?
I had studied fiction writing with a guy named Gordon Lish, and I didn't, and I didn't really know. I mean, that also is another play that someone might point at and say that this has none of the elements that are necessary for a thing to be called a play. So it was a little bit flailing around, but I had great desire to try to figure some things out.
Well, if we were talking, if the theme of this can be a little bit like, it sometimes can be misery, to like sit down and figure out, is this something that people are going to want to see or watch? Was that worse then, or were you, when you say flailing around, was there people telling you, no, you're onto something here, Will, or were you just kind of...
A little bit, but also just to be clear, the misery, I think you guys all know, is actually in sitting down, and
right.
You can make it exponentially worse trying to suddenly imagine an audience, but we all have enough, I hope we have enough howling voices filled with hatred in our heads. Yes? You know how hard you can be on yourself.
Hashtag howling voices filled with hatred.
Which you had a very good thing going there.
Well, I just want it's at the time we were talking about, even now questioning, we talk, I think maybe a little jokingly, like this doesn't have the semblances of a play, or someone could call this a not satisfying experience, those kind of things. At the time, was it the same, or were people telling you, pushing you forward?
It was sort of the same, and I just mean to say, I think that's actually a pretty good play about death and anxiety, in a contemporary via the contemporary consciousness or something like that.
Right.
So it would be the easiest to say that was my first play. I didn't know how to do it, but I actually I don't think I would write it. I would not write it today, but I stand by it as a really good try, and I think then and now there are some people who find it a precise and satisfying experience, and some who don't.
So in there, you got to Thom Pain based on nothing. I'm trying to chart a little bit of a rough timeline here, because that was kind of the play. I don't know how to phrase this, but in a way that put you on a larger platform or put your work in front of more audiences. But that wasn't the goal. I mean, you were writing something very specific.
Yeah, again with the Soho Theatre in London, and and the flu season was in between there, which was at the Gate Theatre. I could. There are names and there are dates, and I could tell you all those.
I guess my question is the monologue. Picking Thom Pain being a thing. It was nominated for the Pulitzer Prize when it came out, and had a number of productions on the. It was like 2002, 2003. Is that roughly when that happened?
It was 2004 over in Edinburgh and London, and then 2005.
2004, 2005. So, talk a little bit about Thom Pain. Like, what was that experience like? Did that kind of change your reality as a playwright? All of a sudden, more people are paying attention to your work?
It was an amazing thing, and absolutely yes. See also that I'm just sort of out of it naturally, so I didn't. I didn't pick up on it. It just there were, in some way, maybe a little bit good, but also just how the cards shuffled out. I had some project something I was trying to figure out in life, or was just trying to figure out life and some writing. And it's so that it was a great thing, and it had and just recently Rainn Wilson acted in the play out in Geffen, Los Angeles, and Oliver Butler and I directed a film of that production, which I just saw. Again, we did a little screening here 2 weeks ago. I hadn't seen it in a few months. And again, I would not write that play right now. But I was really moved by Rainn. What was I just saying about? Oh, Rainn. What was the thing? I said to Rainn. I texted to Rainn. I want to see that movie, The Bucket List, before I die. And, he, with his many millions of followers, tweeted that without attribution, almost instantly. And I can't remember why we were talking about that earlier, but despite that, he turns in the most wonderfully humane, moving performance in this Thom Pain movie.
Is that going to be in release?
I think there's a couple of film festival things, and it will probably be a streaming platform sort of thing. But you were talking about the misery and joy thing and not knowing, and I probably seem silly. I could just stop right there. Maybe I was waiting for people to scream, "No!" It probably seems, I may seem silly, but I really mean it. I was working doing proofreading 4 blocks that way, I can't remember, it was 27th Street, so up there on Madison Square Park, and that was what I was doing that's what I did Monday to Friday, and then I had this secret life of stealing stationery and Xeroxing my plays over there, and working on them. And I don't think you would look at me and say, "Oh, this is a person destined to." I went to UMass for 3 years. You understand that 4 is the normal. And so I mean to say it's hard, but it's really exciting and rewarding, and it sometimes takes time, I don't know if someone had said, because it just took a long time 2001 was Tragedy, and then, well, it was 4 years. It took 4 years to have a production on Broadway after that. And then miraculously and wonderfully 9 years after that, a thing on Broadway and stuff like that. But I don't, if someone had maybe laid it out, there's that baseball expression, too dumb to quit. And I think being too dumb to quit is not the worst thing in the world. For being right. But anyways, back to me seeming silly. I do hope it's a mysterious, beautiful, rewarding, difficult, boring thing to be a playwright, a writer of any kind. But it's no one's forcing you to do it, you know. So I hope you find some joy. In fact, kind of the world doesn't want you to. The world seriously would prefer you know, just do something else. But it's fun to be here. It's fun. I like coming by these offices and seeing all the plays and stuff like that. And it's a good.
Well, I want to talk about the boring for half a second.
Okay.
Because you talked to Singer about finding actual joy in a single line, and just how long it takes to craft that line and the process of that one line. Is writing a Will Eno play time-consuming? Like, what is the process?
I was going to say surprisingly, because I write very slow and I take things, and I really rewrite, and I don't even know how many. I mean, you do versions, but I sometimes just start at the top of the file, and so it would be hundreds and hundreds of discrete versions if I saved every one.
Well, so how long are we talking, just out of curiosity? So is it, because that's not a loaded question, I know the answer, but is it you spend a week or two on a couple of lines, or does a scene take a few months, or how exactly is the process? Things
take years is the only way I would say it, except for Wakey, which I started. This was the last play that I had on, and I was working with Jim Houghton, who founded the Signature Theatre, and he was going to direct a different play that he and I were kind of working on. He had some ideas, and then Jim died on August 2nd, just about a year ago. So I started writing that thing late August, and then it was just on. That was the only time I wrote. I think just because it was the feelings were very simple and accessible, which was that is hard when people die, and it's great to have gotten to know people and with that sort of couple. And Albertine had just been born. But so yeah, I think it would seem suspicious if I told you how many weeks. Some line to write, but it's just, you know, you look at it and then you forget about it, and then you read it again and you're like, oh, that would be better if it were.
Well, you do hear stories of some playwrights. I think Robert Schenkman wrote this recent play, Building the Wall, in response to the Trump election. I think it came to like 3 weeks, he said, he put it together. Is there any world where that would ever happen with you?
I almost drool when I read about people. And I keep waiting and think, oh, maybe this will do that thing. Well, one July he sat down and blah, blah, blah.
I do want to talk about Wakey a little bit, if that's okay, just about the process, because for those that don't know, you were the first of the Signature 5 residents where they, correct me if I'm wrong, over 5 years they commit to producing 2 to 3 original plays during that time?
Yeah, 3.
3 original plays at the time, and you've actually been the first graduate, I guess, of that with Wakey.
Yeah.
What is that process? That's such a gift to playwrights. How is that process for you?
It was really amazing, and back to things taking so long. When Jim called with that idea about the thing, I said yes. I said that sounds amazing, and hung up the phone. Just knowing in my heart that I had just lied to him, and there was no way I could ever. So it was an amazing thing to, and I think back to joy, and I think they're just so wonderful over there. And the whole signature, the whole thing was Jim Houghton, who was such an amazing guy. He was only 57, I think. And I just have never known, when I hear people talk about New Yorkers who have built great structures, I think of Jim Houghton, who built that Signature Theatre. and the whole approach was just was love and patience and confidence and really and joy. And he was a serious, he had a real Irish temper and he'd scream at people. He didn't like being messed around with, but he was a really, really dear and decent person who just kind of got up saying, what great thing could we make today? So I really, truly mean it that I felt sure I was lying, and that I just pictured, I'll get to year 7 and I'll just say, you can stop coming around. So it felt really great. I really liked the plays that, I liked the productions that came together.
So it was Title and Deed, Open House, and Wakey.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Wakey just recently closed a few months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the one I love, you also directed that play.
Yeah.
Was that your first play to direct? Like in that setting?
I had done short things, and that was just, again, back to Jim. He was a director. He was a great director. And so he was a person who just made you feel like you could do things that you were pretty sure you could not do. So I just wanted to direct it for that reason, and I thought maybe I could do a good job. I ended up, Michael Emerson and January LeVoy were so amazing, and also the entire almost fully Canadian design team was it was people Jim Houghton had put together for this totally different production of a totally different play that he was going to direct. So after he died, I wrote to everyone saying, I don't know what this is going to be. You do not have to stick around. I would love it. I'm going to try to do something like this. Blah, blah, blah. And almost every single person stayed. And it, not surprisingly, because Jim just assembled these types of people. It was just the most incredible bunch of people. I loved all of their work. I loved so much, and they were just really amazing people. Plus, just really, everybody tied their own flies and had a motorcycle, and it was just all sort of really interesting people who did things that were fun to talk about when we were talking about the play.
Well, I thought something interesting about you directing that play was the little things that I enjoy in your plays, the highs and the lows, the big cosmic questions, the everyday, the small details, the joy and the misery. That was fully actually expressed in the direction. Those that didn't see it, at the end of the show, there was like a basket at each section where you could take a little squeeze ball or a T-shirt or a koozie. I can't remember exactly.
Fortune cookies.
Fortune cookies. I have a T-shirt. And then out in the lobby was little plates of what?
I was going to bring I have a bunch of these stuff. The fortune cookie, I wrote all the fortunes. You can get it's amazingly cheap to buy 5,000 fortune cookies. 14 different, but my favorite fortune was, you should probably call Anne, was one of them. Almost everyone who got that, there was some Anne. My therapist's name is Anne.
There's so many Annes everywhere who were just like so fulfilled. They're like, oh my God, I got that off my chest. They finally called.
Months later, my wife Maria said, your mom's name is Anne, which is also true.
That's amazing. You also had cake for the audience afterwards. I'm not giving away secrets, but punch, cake, dates. What is that?
Figs.
Figs. Which is kind of an amazing surprise. And just that there's a delight and a joy that I think it's in your writing, that also when you directed the show, you couldn't help, I feel like, put that into the actual production. And in the production itself featured some kind of amazing moments, like the YouTube sequence, cat videos and shrieking animals. And kind of amazing.
That was really, it was a pretty sad play about a guy who dies, and Michael Emerson was so uncannily, he just was so great, so it's kind of sad and quiet. And then it was one of the funner things I've ever worked on, teching this thing that just, it sort of goes from that moment to slowly developing into sort of full-on Lollapalooza.
Yeah. It reminded me of
bubble machine,
like a Flaming Lips.
Bubble machines.
You ever see the Flaming Lips thing?
Yeah,
Lips. Yeah, it reminded me of Flaming Lips. Just like the balls and the balloons. It was just chaos.
And Albertine, my daughter, came over. My sister brought her over when we were teching balloons and bubbles, which was actually, it was so fun because we'd do this thing and it would be this incredible bravura sort of rock concert ending, and then the lights would come up and you'd just just see all these tech people with balloons and bubbles still coming down. So it was nice to have an opportunity to comment, and she just provided some actual human joy.
She also did the curtain speech too, right?
Yes. I had this idea of that, because there's some talk in the play about how kids talk, and skeleton is a word that Albertine said really early, which in some ways to sort of put a little cuteness on the horror of mortality. I think skeleton is a pretty quick way to do it. Yeah, so Albertine and I recorded. I thought she kind of panicked one night. Suddenly, my sister brought her by, and suddenly we were in this little foyer, and with a sound designer she'd never seen before, Nevin Steinberg, with headphones and a microphone. So she almost didn't say anything, and he patched together everything that she said into about a 30-second phone. Turn off your phone, sort of thing.
That's amazing. So I guess this leads to my next question, which is a bit more maybe about some quality of the work. So that creates, I think, for the audience maybe a slightly mysterious thing. So it's like the show is about the horror of mortality, but we're getting cake at the end, and there's a balloon drop. And how do you intentionally craft some mystery into what you're writing?
I don't. I think certain things. I hope you can arrange things, and the actual mystery of them sort of reveals itself more than trying to too much create it. But that play entirely and in very plain ways was about a celebration of people and gratitude and stuff like that. So I hope it was sad and gutting toward the end, but that's how it gets toward the end. And then the whole thing was just to try to have us sort of wake-ish. It happened at Signature Theater, which Jim founded, and it wasn't about Jim. It was because he was not the type of person who would want to have something about. Just quickly, there's one picture of Jim Houghton in all of the Signature Theater, and it's way backstage, and it's just in a hallway on a corner, sort of right about here. And a stage manager I was talking with this guy David, and he was saying, I think Jim, I know, had them put that there, and I think it's just because he didn't like people leaning stuff against this part of the wall. So that's the only place you can find a picture of the founder, artistic director of the Signature, way backstage, just to keep people from leaning.
But if we look at like the Realistic Joneses, Middletown, some of these shows, they very much at the surface you kind of get a sense, okay, I know what this play is, but as you're hearing it, characters are often saying different things than what you expect them to say, or conversations unfold over multiple scenes, which does create a certain mystery for the audience. Is it the mystery of life? Are we intentionally meant to be a bit confused as to what the characters are trying to accomplish?
I hope. I mean, quickest, shortest, truest answer is probably I don't know. But I hope something of the mystery of life is expressed. But I'm certainly not trying. There's not something that I usually know that I'm trying to obscure.
Well, you've said before that your plays are often a factual presentation of a mystery, which I thought was an interesting quote.
Oh.
Right? So it may go back to what you said, that, all of life kind of is a big mystery.
I think it, I don't mean to, I don't want to sort of overload that, because I think you could back out of a lot of actual responsibilities in life by saying, hey, it's a mystery.
Yeah.
Sorry. But it is, and it is to me, I guess. And
you've also said before that birth is this kind of big unknowable event that happens, and death is this big unknowable event that happens, and really it's everything in between is just the kind of the middle stuff between these two big, huge mysteries.
Yes, and importantly, I remember reading someone just describing those two events, saying we have a very unformed consciousness, or mind, maybe you could call it, for the first event, and we're really not there for the second event. So that that was part of the thing behind Middletown, was just there's a lot of talk about those two things, but everything else is there, and that thing that we
Well, you've quoted as being the small earthbound details of life, which I thought was an interesting expression. And that's what kind of Middletown feels like to me.
Yeah.
It's kind of very specific, small events that occur that actually make up a life.
Mm.
How do you, what is your relationship with narrative in that? I mean, have you ever been to write kind of a play that's like a true nuts and bolts play?
I'm in the middle of trying that right now, and I haven't, not because I thought, oh, I was so cool and experimental. My mind does not, it has not, in the same way that I salivate when I read about someone writing a thing in 3 weeks. You know, when you see those things that are really, really, it all just clicks and everything. Oh, that was that guy and that guy. I don't have that sort of sense of things. So it's been a little bit of sort of managing feelings and thoughts, I think there's a way you can proceed sort of rhythmically in things that actually has real meaning in it. It's not trying to say there's no meaning to this thing. I think there's a real rhythm of life. It'd be such a great time to cut into a musical rhythm of life. But I think there's a thing that you can capture, and maybe consciousness has a way that it keeps insisting on itself, and then it goes over there, and so there are all these different things, and like music or something like that is another way to proceed in writing plays, which can go terribly wrong because people live in time, and so they kind of want to see something in time, and there's human things you have to obey and consider.
So do you have any playwrights that are kind of, that you turn to, that you read more frequently than others? You had a strong relationship with Everett Albee for many years, but was that about playwriting or just because you guys got on really well?
I love that guy, and I used to take care of his cat, Snow. And I always found it so charming. I think I wrote that sometime after Edward died. I found it incredibly charming that person named his cat Snow, which many 8-year-old girls might also come up with the same, because there's a little tiny white cat. Snow. Crazily, I think we did some teaching together and did a few events, and so we hardly ever talked about playwriting. But I felt loved by that guy, which was an amazing feeling because he was a tough person. And I loved him back, and I loved his work, and I was always very inspired. By some measure, you could say that guy had some bad decades, and I think it's incredible to think of this life that you're embarked on. You might have a bad decade, hang in there. And he, as he always said, his plays were always going on in Europe and stuff like that, but he really did have a time when no one wanted to put a play out in New York for a while. Just that he continued to work with something like joy and something like curiosity and excitement in the face of people saying, I don't see it.
So we move on to a little bit more about, not necessarily about what the plays are, but how they maybe fit in. We talked about what people are actually experience in their real life, what they come to kind of expect things to happen in a play. You said about Middletown that it's a kind of testament to the difficulty of consciousness, and that it is, quote, hard to be a human being. And I guess when I read that, it feels like right now in this moment of history and in politics that it's particularly true right now. And that, so do you feel like you're more motivated to explore some of these ideas of consciousness and humanity because of the current climate, divided climate politically in the world and in our country? Does that politics affect your work?
It certainly does, and more intensely just in the last, whatever it is, 6 months.
3,000 years.
And it's, I have a lot of trouble with with what's going on, and it seems. I don't even want. In some ways, I don't even want. I want to talk about Jim Howe.
Right.
I want to talk about people I know who tell the truth,
Right.
who believe in working hard and standing by what you, standing behind what you say and all that sort of stuff. And as far as motivating me to write, I wrote a little play that was on out at the Gift Theater, and it was just lights come up on a red bicycle, and then you hear this voiceover, and it's the bike talking to people for maybe 5 minutes long or something like that. And it was 100% entirely because I have a little daughter named Albertine, and because this person who seemed to treat people lousily, and it was a response to shitty things in the world, and it felt really good. And it might seem like too abstract an effort that I had talking bicycle, but it was just a bike sharing his thoughts or her thoughts to humanity.
Well, I don't know how anyone else would respond, but I actually find it less than abstract. I mean, that feels so very specific, and like you're turning a very specific direction in response to something that you have a real problem with. And so rather than, and your approach isn't necessarily about politicizing a thing, it's drawing back to people who do tell the truth, or the simple truths, the simple joy.
Right. Yeah, and I guess
is that a right way to characterize it?
I think that's right. And I guess there was a Mike Patrick Thornton, who's a great actor out in Chicago. He did the voice, and Tracy Letts. Michael couldn't make it one night, and Tracy Letts did the voice, and so that's a wonderful friend to be a busy person sitting backstage with a microphone pretending to be a bike, and he didn't get a curveball or anything like that. But so to me, I guess in some ways, the trick is how you don't want to be another person hectoring people about how they should live. So to me, that was an exciting discovery. Was what if it's just a bicycle talking about bicycle stuff, and here's some thoughts, that sort of worked to me as not being sort of the typical blue state critique of things.
So do you feel like there's an answer in that? It's like, in terms of an audience member, do you prefer that approach that takes maybe a higher track, a more human track than the red state, blue state?
Yeah, or even just to say, I think if you can just tilt things a little bit, I don't mean to say that this bicycle thing was anything. I mean this to be I'm trying to share some little thing. If you can find some funny little thing like that in your writing, you can get across all the you can be kind of as direct as you want, because you've figured out this thing that tilts it a little bit, or that softens the edges a little bit, or that just makes it more deliverable to a person. I guess if you're writing a play, you want it to be deliverable somehow. And it certainly takes you out of it, because there's not a human being on stage, and so there's, so I don't know, if that's, I hope, if you can find those things, it's actually kind of exciting to think, hey, it's a life, off we go.
So speaking of talking red bicycles, what's your relationship to naturalism? And I only ask that because Middletown it's about people in a town, and Realistic Jones's is presumably about two people in a backyard, two couples in a backyard. But it's really, obviously there's about so much more than that. And I guess when I've tried to find an analog, tell me if I'm totally wrong, but I think of Chekhov, that there's a lot of depth and meaning in the simple things that people are doing, in their lives.
Just all I can think is that one of my favorite parts of that bike thing is that someone comes out from backstage, and the bike says, I'm almost done.
Which is very natural.
And the bike is actually really nice to the person and says, there's some, I saw someone put some donuts out around backstage. You might look, there's usually someone there doing a crossword. So this bike seems very compassionate to this person who seems sort of lost. So in a good way, it seems so weird. Sometimes I go see a play, and as the more sort of natural and realistic and all that stuff, the more weird it sometimes seems. Wow, it's all grown-ups here. Grown-ups memorize this thing. Grown-ups are sitting here aghast that person ran in over there. And so I'm just saying we've settled on this notion that this one thing is, is called naturalistic and realistic. It is grown-ups who memorize this thing running around. So I don't, I hope there is there's some realisticness to people's feelings and to the rhythm of thought and all these things. And, so I try to observe. There are things I try to observe. Right? So the rules, ancient rules of something.
So we have a few more minutes, right? 5 more minutes, great. Want to take time for some questions, a handful of questions, but before we do that, any words of advice for this group of writers? Or anything you want to say, or anything you want to ask me?
All that other stuff. Joy, curiosity. No, just to say that again. It's a really it's a noble thing to sit down and try to write a play, and so sit down and try to write a play.
I think we have some time for a handful of questions for Will. Go ahead.
Hi, Will.
And speak up, please speak up.
Oh, don't tell me what to do.
I was only speaking of the internet audience, that's all I can do.
Oh, okay, well. I was wondering if you've ever been in a place where you really didn't know what you were going to write next, and what you did then.
Yeah, I certainly have, and that has happened most often when I actually, in fact, was in the middle of writing a play. This is someone else has better advice because I have.
Well, Will, they're not here.
Yeah. I can tell you I have given up on things in despair that I have then come back to, and a couple of times, and maybe 3, I just sort of went back to the simple idea that I had in the first place, and where I went wrong was sort of getting a little bit fancy and sort of getting afraid of the simple thing that I was trying to do. But so the short answer, I would take about 6 months to just cry about the thing, and put it away, and then, headstand. I actually, if you stand on your head for a little while, I think that's a really good thing. And those are my 2 thoughts. But I know that you will do it and do it wonderfully.
Any more questions? Other questions? Yes.
You mentioned writing about your family and no resolution of everybody disappears.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice, or maybe just talk a little bit on your experience of letting go of a story that's very personal to you and allowing it its own life, and eventually, hopefully, something like that will be done in different areas of the world that you may not ever see. So I guess can you speak to writing something very personal to you and how you guide yourself from that?
Yeah, so in this play, the mother character, she says, among other things, she's saying to these kids about this father, well, he loved you when you were little. It was only when you started to talk, which is something my mom said so many times. It really was a comfort to no one, really. But, so it was an amazing thing. People got a laugh out of that line, and I felt like on the one hand, for a little while, I felt like a bad son, and then I sort of got some mischievous glee out of the thing, and I don't know what to. It felt so great to take this thing that was a lot of pains and frustrations, and actually, it felt so really truly rewarding to feel that someone else could see something in there, that they could engage in some way that was a totally different way. So, I have a buddy, and we're kind of similar people, and we come from kind of similar families. And he's the only difference. I don't know if he's still. We're not super in touch. I don't know if he's still trying to write. But he never saw the sport kind of in just trying to make something out of life, and never. And in some ways, that's the only difference. Is I saw some sport, and I don't know why I picked that word. But if you can see that, it's not exactly. It's never going to be exactly your story, and it's always going to be a little bit thing. So if you can make the separation, there's great power to be found in using the things that are deepest in you and all that, and then also it's fun to take some glee in writing something. So those are some thoughts.
Great. We've time for hands. Time for one more question. Yes.
I'd love to hear a little bit about your revision process.
Cutting there's nothing funner than cutting. There's nothing more exciting than, and that's one that's sort of related to the personal thing that suddenly you realize, oh, that's actually, what if it just goes from here to there, or what if this part, that I find great mystery in that thing, and sort of so that's a big thing, and that in some ways there's the entirely illogical thing of just reading the same thing that you read yesterday and it doesn't quite sound right, and you cut this thing, or you but one very practical, physical, real thing is just reading things out loud, and I think reading great writing, and Shakespeare is good just because the consonants, this sort of ratio of consonants and all that stuff. You get the feel of that stuff, and it is amazing how quickly you can feel it going wrong. If you read a line out to yourself, you just can feel, oh, that really ended too quickly, or that went on 3 beats too long, and and headstands. But at that and reading it out loud in front of people you like makes that even quicker. That process. Ooh, that's not right there. So that and we are all probably purely into the screen world, but I always printing things up, and so you could actually go through with a pencil. That was always a great stage of things, to actually be able to cross things out and write little drawings and stuff like that.
Cool. Anything else you want to say? Your final thoughts?
I don't know why men don't ask questions anymore. It used to be, in the old days, men would ask a question here and there. But, this is a woman's age, so right. Ask more questions and you will be stronger. And you
will end with that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all.